are seeing the President of the United States. Look at the lines.
You join our movement.
A lot of President Trump supporters here.
Greatest movement in the history of our country.
This week we have legendary comedian Jim Breuer from Saturday Night Live, back in the days when it was still funny. It's not a mask that he was wearing this weekend, though. I think it's a muzzle.
If he did that once in my house, go, you all right, man? Because it's a little weird the way you sniffed. Did you see the kid felt a little uncomfortable?
We learned that the Obama-Biden administration weaponized the intelligence community to take down the incoming Trump administration.
I just feel like the president has done everything with all of his heart. And when he does something, he gives all of it.
Democrats are really in for a big surprise in November.
And the Republican Party is all about individualism, and it's about freedom.
We see these promises made and promises kept.
For Hispanics from every corner of this hemisphere, they recognize that President Trump is not only willing to stand up and fight for freedom and democracy, but he is also willing to stand up to despots and dictators.
We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. We will make America great again.
Welcome to Team Trump Online.
Obama comes up. There's no magic wand for that, Donald. You can't just make it happen. Well, abracadabra, buddy!
They were obviously triggered. Biden is clearly on a teleprompter.
This is why I wrote the book Triggered, folks! Well, guys, we're back with another episode of Triggered, and I think you guys are going to like this one. I mean, this is going to be a little different. We're now on basically our 10th day of pretty serious protests, and I wanted to bring in, one good friend and one friend who's a little bit of a newer friend, and we got Herschel Walker and Burgess Owens, two NFL legends, college football legends, African Americans who grew up in the segregationist South. When we see everything that's gone on over the last 10 days to 2 weeks, I just think that these guys can bring so much to the table. And, I'm going to do uncharacteristically. I know I'm a Trump. I like to talk. When I get the mic, I usually use it, guys. Herschel knows that probably even from when I was a 6-year-old kid. You can't turn off the genes, but I'm gonna learn by listening as well today. And so I'd love to. First of all, thank you both for being here. Burgess, for all the stuff that you're doing. You've become so politically active. Herschel, for being just sort of a lifelong friend and someone who's just become a great entrepreneur. Both of you have really thrived post-NFL. So I think there's so much we can really cover. And, I want to talk to you about that. I mean, both of you, you can decide who wants to start off, but what's your perspective on what's happening right now in America? Again, 10 days of sort of riots and looting and some peaceful protests, but not as much as there probably should be. And I think we all agree that there probably should be quite a bit of protesting given what went on. But, give us your perspectives. Maybe we'll start with you, Burgess, and then, I'd love to hear Herschel, because you had a really impassioned sort of Instagram post I saw in the last 48 hours, Herschel, that I thought was just, it really struck the right tone where you can be upset about something, but it doesn't mean you're lashing out at your anger at neighborhoods, destruction, especially neighborhoods that are perhaps the places where, so many of the people actually affected by this sort of racism or potential racism actually live. It doesn't make as much sense to me, but Burgess, why don't you start off, give us your thoughts, and let's talk about it a little bit.
Let me just kind of start off by saying how much I appreciate people like Herschel. We were talking before you came on. It's old school. We happen to be blessed, been raised by a family, a community that really taught us about pride, about work, about counting our blessings. And it's nice that we now have that experience, so it's not hypothetical to us what the American dream looks like. And that's where my background comes from, that position. I grew up in a middle-class community, in a middle-class family, which by that time, 50% of Black Americans in the segregated South, West, East, wherever, were part of the middle class. And the reason why is because they have 40% of us that were business owners. Just imagine going through a community and everything around you, because there's no whites, everything around you were business owners, whether it be Speed grocery store or Perkins station or Baker's pharmacy or the hospital with all black nurses and black doctors. What that does, first of all, it lets you know that the middle class is real. And what bothers me the most is the way that the leftists have not only put down my family's generation, generations before, because they worked hard to get respect. They didn't demand it, they commanded by succeeding, by beating out the other guy, by working hard. We were taught very simply, if they don't believe in you, work harder than they do, study harder than they do, but you just prove your point, and you have pride in who you are, you have pride in your name, and most importantly, this is the process, pride in God, country, family, and women. We were taught that. What I've seen happen over the years, very simply, is not by accident. What the leftists did, our biggest enemy has not been white racism. It has been black elitism. It's those who are Marxists, who take the position that they are the end all, and they do anything they can to turn our community around so they keep their power. The NAACP, the Black Caucus, has done nothing for 60 years to keep our country, to keep our community where it is. Matter of fact, it's done nothing but leave left misery with us. So what I know is happening is that 40% of business ownership is now down to 3.8%. I cannot emphasize strong enough. This is about the fight for the middle class. Yeah. The middle class is what's made our country so unique, so different. It is where empathy is found, service, entrepreneurship, risk-taking, legacy for family, all that's done in the middle class. And the bigger that middle class is, the freer our country is. What the left did to my community is it shrunk the middle class, built out the big elitist class, and built out the poor class. So what you have now is what you see is using that middle class now to move forward. So it's happening to our country. What I'm seeing right now, just to get to the last 10 days or so, this has been in the works for a while. They're trying to destroy what drives the middle class, which is small business owners. Here in Utah, we have 277,000 businesses. 99% of them are small businesses. If you come to Utah, Salt Lake, you feel the spirit here. It's very free, very nice, very friendly. It's because business owners have set this culture. And they're trying to do now is what they do every 4 years. Go into the black community and destroy those lives of those trying to pull their community out. And again, we're now seeing it, and I'm excited about making a difference when it all comes down to it, for sure.
Well, no, I mean, you bring up an interesting point, because I witnessed sort of some of what you're saying, which was I was at the State of the Union when my father was able to announce the all-time lowest unemployment for the African-American community. And that is something you would think that in 2020, we would all be able to celebrate. We would all be able to get together behind. And yet the Congressional Black Caucus didn't even applaud it. No. So where are we, if that's the case? I mean, when you see something like what happened to George Floyd this week, what I'll say is this, and before I comment on anything, I sort of scroll because, if I say something, I'm going to get owned, right? I mean, I scrolled through Twitter for an hour. I couldn't find a single person, white, black, Hispanic, law enforcement, not law enforcement, who agreed with what happened, who said, you know what? This officer acted correctly. I mean, it was literally probably the only thing in 2020 that everyone actually agreed that this was too far. I mean, frankly, law enforcement was some of the most vocal, talking about how crazy this was, how bad it was, because it makes their job harder. They lose that faith. They lose that trust. It puts a crosshair on them. So Herschel, talk about your experiences with that, because I mean, I'm sitting there being like, wow, this is great. Like, there was no ambiguity whatsoever, and yet these things still started. I mean, you grew up in the similar. You grew up in in Georgia, in the South during those segregationist times. What's changed from then and today? Have you noticed big changes? Has it not, or is there? Has it just been politicized by the media much more so than there? Because there were obviously real problems then.
Well, I think what has happened, which is sad, and I think it's real sad to me, and it hurts that I think they're trying to fool the African-American community. And what I mean by that is they're trying to use this word racism, and because they don't like what you feel or what you think, you're racist. And I said, guys, racist mean a whole lot more to me than just a word. Racist is, and I think because this administration, they have tried to use racism as a way to taint this administration, which is wrong, because I said proof is in the pudding. And what I mean by that is you look at what this administration has done for the 3 years it's been in office compared to, let's go back 4, the president that's been in office. I mean, you look at that, and that's what I try to explain to the African-American community. And what has really upset me more than anything, as you said, when I looked at what happened to Floyd, I wanted to be a police officer. And I was angry. I was very angry. I look at what happened to Aubrey in Georgia. I was angry. And then I look at this beating they did to this young white gentleman in Dallas, and I almost shedded a tear. I said, what has we become? That where is our leaders? And I don't mean leaders. Where are the leaders? Meaning our Congress, our senators that's supposed to be jumping on this. Well, you remember a couple of months ago, it was Black Lives Matter with football. Well, nothing was done. Well, this administration, your father has went out and has done so many different things for the African-American community, but yet no one has acknowledged that. No one want to talk about that. And I said, wait a minute. We are not this country. We are a country that was built on laws. That's the reason everyone want to come from where they're from, come to here, because we was a country that was built on laws. Well, today, we have totally have let it go, and our leaders have disappeared. Mm-hmm. And then to hear a leader after your father decided to come up with a solution to criticize. And I'm talking about you not coming up with a solution, but yet you're going to criticize. And yet I heard someone, and I'm not going to call a name, who said this has been going on since, this has been going on for years. This has been going on for years. And my thing is, wait a minute, you've been in office for years. So what have you done? So I think that people need to realize this. And I said, when you go to the voting booth, you need to, first of all, you need to fill out that census. Let people know that you exist. Fill out that census, let people know you exist. And when you go to the voting booth, you need to start looking at people that have been in office for years and nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Then you look at results. Look at results from your father. And I'm not going to talk about Vice President Biden. And this is what I told someone. If he wins, I'll respect him as president. I would not go out and protest. I would not go out and do anything because he won from a system we put in place.
Yep.
Well, President Trump won from a system we put in place. So we must respect him as president, not go out and protest, not go out and do this, because it started out Russia. And then it became impeachment.
Yep,
then it's
100%.
Pandemic. And now it's this. And I said, he has continued to fight, continued to be for this country. And Don Jr., you remember this. In 1985, when I was with your father, I made a statement at that time. I said, this guy here could be president of the United States.
It's true.
In 1985, I made that statement, and I said, because he loved America. Mm-hmm. And if you got a president, you hope to love this country. People get mad when you say, I want to make America great again. You know what? I want to make myself greater again. And that's what you want. You want a president that want to build home up first. And that's why I got upset, because I see this country, people have totally lost it. And I'm not sure what is happening, but I know it's not right. And until we can stand up as leaders and tell the leaders that we elected into Washington, no more of this. You're not going back to office, because you know what? You're not a leader. If you're a leader, don't go out and do it when everything is great. Go out and do it when it's tough. A leader is someone that's going to do it when no one is looking. A leader is someone that's going to, everyone not going to be happy with, but a leader is someone that's going to do it when it may make people angry. And then I don't like his tone. What do you mean I don't like his tone? You know what's so funny? My mom gave me some very hard tones at that time in my life.
Well, but that's what I always said is Donald Trump is maybe the disciplinarian parent we all needed at some point in our lives, right?
Exactly right.
You can sort of, sometimes you need the kick in the butt, to get things going. And as you know, and I think I sort of explained to people, we've known each other for a very long time. And so it was always interesting when, I've been called every name in the book. I'm racist. I'm an anti-Semite. Whatever happens to be the narrative of the day, they can sort of throw that at my family. But I actually always took great offense into that. I know, we joked once sort of about it, which was like, back in the day, people don't know this. I was probably 6 years old when I traveled with your family to Disney World. And I go, if my father's racist, he probably wasn't going to let his son his
Stay with
bowl
me.
cut, hang out with, an African-American man totally alone for, a week at a time in Disney World. It was sort of an interesting thing. And that you had been to our home many times.
Yes, you forgot about the Bronx Zoo. And that's why I said when they say that he's a racist, I'm saying he may say things you don't like, but that's got nothing to do with racism.
Can I add?
He says the things you need to hear. So
can I add a little bit? And then this is really what we have to understand, because we're talking like people who are trying to find solutions. We try to figure out why can people be hypocritical, how can they not be consistent. We have to understand it's not about what good people really see as getting to the truth. This is a spiritual war we're fighting. We have a country built on Judeo-Christian values, nothing like in the history of mankind. The bottom line of that is that we learned every generation gets better and better of looking at each other from inside out, not outside in. There's no society in the history of mankind that has assimilated everyone, tolerated more people, and we fight and serve for those of us, because at the end of the day, it's all about, again, that bottom line is a middle class based on small businesses. We learn to look at ourselves as bringing value to each other. Yeah. We're dealing with an evil that has always been against education, God, industry, and family. It's always been that way. So when we talk about the Marxists and leftists, we understand that they're not trying to get a conversation in which they're trying to find a solution. They want to get a position where they can shut us down, not have conversation, make us as ignorant as possible. There's a reason why the state of California, this is 2017, 75% of the black boys in the state of California cannot pass standard reading and writing tests. When you cannot read and write, Space Force doesn't mean a thing to you. When you cannot read and write, we're not going to have this kind of conversation where you're thinking through, critically thinking. You're going to be emotionally bound to whatever they're telling you. And then they go and destroy our family. What I saw firsthand, and I'm going to put this in context because it's important that a lot of people don't understand our history, understand why, first of all, we don't understand it, and realize that we have been a country that's always been accepting to everyone. Karl Marx, the founder of Marxism, said very simply, the first battleground is rewriting of history. There are Americans today who have no idea that the 40s, 50s, and 60s was a black community that led our country in the growth of the middle class. Men matriculated from college, percentage of entrepreneurs over 40%, and men committed to marriage over 70%. That was a community I grew up in that was proud, patriotic, visionary, and willing to take on anybody who told us we couldn't do it. We weren't demanding respect, we were commanding respect. And I can go back even further, but the key is we don't know that. Why? Because Marxists have put themselves in our education system, and we have little laboratories being built that many of Americans have no idea. This is the downside of Americans. Well, I said upside and downside. We are eternal optimists. We're the people that go out and we dream big for our families, our jobs, retirement, our kids going to Disney World, all those things. So we kind of begin to forget that there's evil outside our doorsteps. We just inherently forget how bad evil can be until we get a 9/11 or Pearl Harbor or what's happening right now. What happens though with Americans, when we wake up, we're the kind of people, we come together and we realize we care about who we are. We're not let anybody put us down or destroy us. We're at that moment now with this COVID, with what's going on in the streets of all these cities, what's going to happen with your dad is going to explain and show people who's behind this. This is not organic. This evil has been put in place to destroy the infrastructure for our country. And for those Americans who really, and I'm now talking not only to Democrats, but independents and Republicans, one thing about the leadership of the left, they're Marxists, they're socialists, they don't care about collateral damage. And right now, Democrats who run small businesses, you now are collateral damage. So by
the way, that's a really good point, because it's one of those things you see, Joe Biden's now, he's going to fix it. Well, why didn't he fix it in the first 50 years? 50 years of his Washington, D.C. career. I mean, this is the epitome of the swamp. If he had a solution, why didn't he bring it up while he was vice president? It's not like these problems magically appeared right now. They've been going on, as you've said, for 50 years, and that's how long he's been in Washington. They've been perhaps going on longer than that. But if he had the answers, why didn't he do that? And by the way, why doesn't the media have a problem like that really terrible story I'm reading about of the police officer, the 77-year-old retired captain up in Minnesota who was literally just trying to defend his neighborhood gets killed.
Throughout St. Louis City, people looted and destroyed businesses, and one of those places targeted was Lee's Pawn and Jewelry Shop in North St. Louis, where outside a former St. Louis police captain trying to protect the business was found shot to death on the sidewalk.
These awful criminals took his life.
For 38 years, Captain David Dorn protected the city of St. Louis and continued serving as chief of police in Moline Acres for 5 more years.
I couldn't believe it.
That's why loved ones are shocked he was shot and killed as he continued protecting in his last moments.
In the streets, he happens to be an African-American law enforcement. How come it doesn't seem like his life matter, Herschel? Why doesn't his life matter? Or the officer in Las Vegas, also African-American. There's been 5 or 6 of them, who have gone out to defend their neighborhoods. They've been killed in the streets by looters and rioters, but it doesn't seem, I don't see the Black Lives Matter protesters chanting for them or coming out for them. Why don't their lives matter?
Because, as I said early on, they're trying to get the truth from us. The truth is what can set us free. And it's sad, and Burgess just mentioned it, education. I said, you have to educate. And that's the reason I said your father has pulled the cover back on the swamp. And you see now that things that they said that we're going to handle has not been handled. Racism has been around forever. But is things better? Yes, they are. Is things at the best? No, it's not. But we can still go forward. And one of the things we got to do is right now we're taking a huge step backwards because they do not want to see this administration succeed. Every place this administration has gone, they've tried to put a roadblock there. Well, this administration has stepped over that roadblock, so they continue to put another roadblock. Well, I want the American people, not just African American. I want the Caucasian. I want the Latinos. I want them to see this administration is doing what they say they're going to try to do. And if they had a little bit of help, meaning a little bit of help, just think where we could be at today.
Well, I think that's a real good point because, again, if you look at, you sort of listed some of the accomplishments that Donald Trump has had, whether it be economy or the unemployment numbers before the scourge. But honestly, how about unprecedented funding of historically black universities? You got the Prison Reform Act, by the way, which basically put so many African Americans and others, but disproportionately affected that community through the 93 crime bill that Joe Biden is literally on the byline for. Opportunity zone legislation to build up so many of these neighborhoods, frankly, that have now been torn down over the last 10 days. I mean, Donald Trump's record is actually one of action, actually helping the African-American community, and yet you'd never know it. You certainly wouldn't hear it in the communities because the Democrat Party is so entrenched. How do you break through that? Because I think if people really got the message, they actually saw, wait a second, you mean he's not just racist because they said he's racist on TV and are running with that narrative, but he did things that can actually better our communities. He's for school choice so our children can get a great education and not just be indoctrinated into whatever the public school system is and actually has the opportunity to thrive. If they saw that, don't you think you'd actually do a lot better?
Can I answer that?
You know what, guys? Yeah. They're saying we got to go to break, so we'll come back in 2 minutes. But I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this one because I think it's really critical, and hopefully can open some people's eyes.
Okay.
So we'll be right back. Hang in there.
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black. Take a look at my record, man.
When I marched in the civil rights movement, I marched with tens of thousands of others.
He had not actually marched during the civil rights movement and kept telling the story anyway.
I came out of the civil rights movement. I was one of those guys that sat in and marched and all that stuff.
Now, his aides went back to say, look, he was in office marching for the idea.
That's not what the word marching means on Twitter.
I was not out marching.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
And you ain't black. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. You ain't black. You ain't black. You ain't black. You ain't black.
The most racist thing a person could tell me is that I'm supposed to choose something based on my race.
You ain't black.
Well, guys, we're back, and we sort of talked about, actions versus talk. We've heard a lot of talk from the Democrat Party. They are masters at pandering. But if you actually look at the results of this administration, they got things done for the African American community as well as others. Frankly, historical things, and frankly, many things under unprecedented incoming, meaning there's never been a president that's taken this kind of heat, whether it's the Russia nonsense, all lies, the impeachment stuff, all just a hoax after hoax to try to make it harder for this administration to get anything done, and yet my father's actually done it. I mean, Herschel, you're an entrepreneur. Now, you were able to do a lot of those things before my father stepped in, but talk about that and what it's like being an African American business owner, what that's been like, and what some of that legislation can do to push things forward, and maybe how you can disseminate within the community to realize that what you see on TV and what you hear from Democrats that are very strongly entrenched in so many of these urban neighborhoods, what's not getting to the average person that's driving their decision making?
Well, I think they have sort of looked at African American and made them short and not realize that your father has had more meeting with African American than any president I've seen lately, and he's tried to work and get through anything they've asked. But the problem I think he's having is they do not realize that some of the left do not think African American can think, because I think this may backfire on them. The reason why is they're talking racism, but if you look out on the streets, who are the majority of the people on the streets? And I said, wait a minute, there's more whites on the streets than there are blacks on the streets. And I think that may backfire because I think most African Americans are saying their businesses are being destroyed.
Yeah.
Why? This is what they work for, and I said this. This is the reason it almost made me cry, and the reason I made that little video. I said, how hard someone has worked for their livelihood, how hard they work, how much time they sacrifice, and to have one night where someone come in and destroy everything, as it just totally never existed. And do you know how hard that is in today's world? And people doesn't care, and the left doesn't care.
Yeah,
they say absolutely nothing.
Yeah, you see that. I mean, and it also seems like obviously, some of these protests that are again destroying these neighborhoods, and you're seeing some of those viral videos come out. The African American business owner who's saying, "Well, what are you guys doing?" Like
today, we found Corboy Bala, who invested his life savings into opening this sports bar, cleaning up. While our camera was there, looters came back to try to steal his safe.
Right, trying to steal the safe.
I don't know what we're gonna do. We're gonna work so hard to get here. So hard.
Tell him, sister.
Look what you did to my store.
Tell him, sister.
No! Look what you did to my store.
Tell him, sister. That's right, because I got they back. These are my dudes right here. Good
Look
men.
at the things you've done.
Good men.
Look!
The Black Lives Matter.
We've been here all night cleaning up. All night cleaning.
I don't know how, stealing a flat screen honors the death and the shameful death, though I think we all acknowledge that. I don't think there was anyone that didn't say what happened to George Floyd was a travesty.
Let me say this. Let me say this for a minute.
There seems to be professional agitators also creating these problems. I mean, talk about that.
I think what's wrong, before we get somewhere, and I mentioned this, I said, I think it is unfair to mention anyone named Floyd, Aubrey, anyone's name with these crimes. That is a difference to protest and be doing crime and yet mention their names with these crimes. That's not fair.
I think it does his memory a huge disservice. I agree with you.
I don't think they should mention. I don't think that should be mentioned in the same context. And I think for the families to mention when you have these people looting, these people rioting, these people doing these things, do not mention their names in the same context.
Can I add to what Herschel's saying? First of all, I think this is going to backfire. There's one thing about the American people. It's in our DNA. We believe in rule of law. We believe in law and order. We really do, no matter what community we come from. And for blacks to see that their hard work is being destroyed and people are standing aside and not doing anything about it, they're going to start asking questions. One of the things that wasn't mentioned earlier about what your dad had actually done for this black community, and this is big for me, because again, I grew up understanding the power of being an entrepreneur. I've been one all my life. But the fact that 400% increase in black business ownerships over the first 2.5 years, in which your dad was a president. That speaks volumes, because what that means, people have hope. They're willing to take an investment. They're willing to say, how can I make sure I improve my community? I can develop something I can pass to my kids, my legacy. Those are the kind of things that goes into the mind of a business owner that is very, very unique and very different. I tell you what we can do, though, and this is where I think we have to understand our fight. We're in a fight, no question. We're in a very, very difficult one, but we can win this by making sure we're engaged as time coming around. See, what it comes down to, we have done this. We've had the success we've had over the last, almost 4 years without help. I mean, it's amazing. Even when the first initial Republican House of Representatives weren't really there to help out.
Yeah.
There's too many softies.
That was the never Trump wing of the House. Yeah. That didn't work out so well.
And then we come with the Pelosi group that's been truly aggressively anti-American and everything else. Imagine, I'll tell you what I see coming into this next House. Because we now understand what leadership looks like that loves America first, it looks like a leader who's doing it for free, taking the heat. All of a sudden, people like myself who never thought about being a politician, never thought about it. Across this country, we're finding freshmen that are going to come into this House once we win it. It's going to be a whole new day. We're not there to be lobbyists. We're not there to be career politicians. We're there to save our country because we see what it looks like, that we're at risk. And I'll tell you what, you get a House back that truly, I'm going to call them the SEAL team, because I really think that. I think this new group is going to be so unique and so different. And we're going to be putting more pressure for even the Senate to have more backbone. And we're going to work with our president who has this vision of bringing our country back. And for the next 4 years, our country will see a renaissance that we have never seen before. Not only with that renaissance will come a growth in our economy, but people coming back together. Because what happened with the Obama administration, his legacy will be from this point on how much he divided us. He came in as a post-racial president, left as our country is a mess, with people looking at each other's skin color across the board. We're going to start coming back together because we're going to have success. We're going to start looking at the meritocracy piece. We're going to start looking at universities that are now Marxist laboratories and figure out what can we do to stop funding places that push out this product of anti-American. We need to stop funding them. I don't care how long they've been around. If they're not doing the job, make them work. Make them get some parameters so they have to show they're giving our country value. We're going to pay them for anything. So anyway, those are things we can have a conversation about once we get the House back. So for Americans out there, look across your country. I don't care what party you're in. If you don't want what's happening in Chicago, Baltimore, New York, if you don't want what's happening in these blue states, these blue cities, let's make sure we put in a solid conservative group of House representatives who love our country, who will support our president, and get our country moving in the right direction and point out, again, where we really do believe we do belong as we move forward.
I think one of the biggest keys right now, and this may be way off key, but in times like this, we have to put that elephant and that donkey aside. Meaning, this country is in turmoil. So I don't care whether you're Democratic or whether you're Republican. We're Americans. So we need to put that aside and come together and be America and put this country back together. And if you can't do that as a leader in Washington, you don't need to be there. You don't need to be there because this country right now is hurting. These small businesses are hurting. And if you was elected to go to office, you mean you have to support the people. So I think it's time to put that aside and come together as a group and get this country back to working. Because that's the way it is. And and I said, I volunteer myself. If they want to sit on the sideline, I'm a bike up. I come in. Because the first thing I would do is say, guys, we're not going to have these protesters like this. We're not going to do this like this. No. We have a time. Peaceful protesting is at this time. When it gets night, you shouldn't be out. People going to bed at that time. You shouldn't be protesting at night. It's time to go to bed.
Well, what really unifies everyone, and you guys know this probably better than anyone, what unifies people is winning.
Yeah.
We need to get the economy going again. We need to get the job numbers back again. And the guy that did that before, the guy that did it against all odds, the guy that did that when everyone said, you can't do that. Remember, there's no magic wand for that, what Obama said?
Yeah.
It is Donald Trump.
Some of those jobs of the past are just not going to come back. And when somebody says, like the person you just mentioned, who I'm not going to advertise for, that he's going to bring all these jobs back. Well, how exactly are you going to do that? What are you going to do? There's no answer to it. He just says, well, I'm going to negotiate a better deal. Well, how exactly are you going to negotiate that? What magic wand do you have? And usually the answer is he doesn't have an answer.
And so, you guys as athletes know that winning creates that unity, right? It's why winning teams always have full stadiums. Losing teams, not so much.
Don, can I just say this? Because it's really not, it's not going to be up to leaders at this point. What I've come to understand is that the people that are out there that we've put in place, they're doing things on purpose. No matter what side of the aisle, what side of the process they are, they're people who they want us to fail. That's who they are. Their leadership is how can they get people to fail, to feel miserable. That's what they're all about. So it comes down to we the people. We have to educate ourselves. We have to get out there and point to those, because they're not going to see it through CNN and MSNBC and all those guys. They're not going to see it. We have to roll up our sleeves and go out there and talk to folks about what does it take to now get an opportunity to get back on page again. And we get the right people in office, the right kind of leaders who will stand up. And not that we're going to always agree. Even in the conservative party, there's not always agreement, but at least we have the same end game. And once we get people in office on both sides, well, we need to get those that are against us out first. There are people who hate our nation. We need to get them out of office, put them in place where people might have a different way of getting there, but still love our country first. Once we get that done, then we will, no question, continue to move forward the way we should be.
Well, I love that, and you sort of alluded to it earlier. And for those who don't know, who are watching and tuning in, and we've gotten some pretty good viewership, Burgess is actually running for Congress in Utah right now. He's someone, he didn't need this job. He's a successful author. He's done all sorts of things post NFL, and that's what's sort of awesome about you guys is, you've both done really well post your NFL careers. It's not just sort of hanging your hat on that. Herschel, you've been an incredible entrepreneur. Burgess as an author, and again now, running for government and sort of, I don't want to say taking the lead of Donald Trump, but saying, you know what? I can get in there. I can do this. I can make a difference, and I can give back to my country. Yeah. So I think that's awesome. Now, what I do want to do, because part of this podcast isn't just about the politics. We like to have a little bit of fun about this. Let's talk a little bit about football. And unfortunately, even football has been politicized a lot in the last couple of years. But couple of things. Burgess, when you were playing, some of the hits that you had back in the day. Today would have probably gotten you suspended or thrown out of the league. What do you think about sort of the new rules, the new way of play? What do you think about that? And then, I'd like to hear both of your sort of into political sports. And again, it's not just the NFL. You've sort of seen, the NBA kowtowing to China and running with the communist propaganda talking points. And I get that basketball is big over there, but man, that was sort of shocking. Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right.
Because people want to see that. We had some legendary hits.
Absolutely, and you have to understand, there was a different day. I came to a time, my last 3 years was with the Oakland Raiders, back when they used to win a lot of football games, and there was it was a culture, and I'll say this, it was a culture that really defined, I guess, America. What I loved about Al Davis, he could care less about doing anything but winning. That was the bottom line for him. Just win, baby. Some of those might remember that. So what he would do, he'd look around the league. He'll find guys who are too old, too rambunctious, too rebellious, too whatever to fit in the NFL normally, and say, come on here. Come to me. Get on the field. Do your thing. Just win on Sunday, and you got a place. It was a very welcome very welcome organization. It was one that was so unique. You can laugh your head off just looking around and hearing the stories of these guys. But to me, it reflected America. We're so diverse. We have many of us are underdogs in so many different ways. We come together in this particular place and we just win, baby. So for me, it was the greatest way to in my career, living the American dream with a team that really enhanced and personified the American way. To say the least, in those days, it was all about intimidation. If you get a receiver coming across the middle, that was a free safety.
Yeah.
The goal was to intimidate, and obviously,
you did.
Yeah, we're paying the price now. That group that did that, we're paying the price. So we're being a lot smarter. We have to be, because it is a collision sport. And at some point, we do have to pay the consequences of those collisions down the road. The goal is to be as safe as we can. What I would love to see, though, Don, if I could say this, I would love to see the old style respect, pride, discipline, humbleness that we came through. The days in which you hand the football to the umpire after a ref after the score, because you knew it was a team thing. It wasn't a me thing. The days when we used to wave the camera and say, "Hi, Mom," instead of doing all this stuff for ourselves. It was a different day, but it's an indication of what's happening behind the scenes in the family unit. And not just to go back real quickly, once we get the family unit back, this conversation changes, because at that point, kids grow up, and we need to make sure that happens. And that's where policies come in. That's one of the reasons I'm running, by the way. I realize as long as the left continues to control the House, we will continue to bring hopelessness to our kids and their families. So we have to make sure we change that around and make it work.
Well, so Herschel, as a running back, you didn't exactly shy away from the hits either. And then more importantly, what many may not know about you, later on in life, and I mean quite later on in life in the history of an MMA fighter, you got into one of the biggest leagues in mixed martial arts in your late 40s and 50s, and won professional fights. We won't talk about the 50s. I know. Yeah. As I get into my 40s, I'm doing the math. I'm saying, wait a second. When I started hanging out with Herschel, there's got to be a 10, 12-year gap. So I know you're there. We'll pretend you're not. Talk a little bit about that, and also, the transition to, and honestly, the discipline, because I mean, you're such a disciplined guy in everything that you did, whether it was, again, football, track, being able to get into MMA and having the physical prowess, talk about some of that discipline, but to get into MMA in your 40s and win, that takes a special kind of discipline that's probably, in all fairness, lacking, today in this country, in a younger generation. Talk a little bit about that and how that helped you persevere, thrive, and take on so many different challenges, whether it be on the football field, in the octagon, or really in business as an entrepreneur.
Can I add some before Herschel starts, because this is an area that he doesn't know. As a professional athlete, for 10 years in NFL, I remember the day I decided this is too much. You get to a point where your mind still wants to do it, but your body doesn't. And I've always respected those who took it a year or two behind me. I have so much respect to see what Herschel's done after getting through that process, because it takes a lot to get your mind really overcome that pain. You got to go through that pain. You just have the lack of youth to go along with it. So,
and it's not like he took up speed walking. I mean, it wasn't like he took up he didn't take up jogging. He got into mixed martial arts. I mean, it's a little different. I mean, punching people to death is that's a whole different world. So, I mean, Herschel, talk about it, because I mean, it really is amazing. I mean, to have the storied career that you had, a college legend, NFL legend, to retire. And again, after a sport that's going to do some damage to you physically, but to maintain that, to be able to jump into the octagon and literally become a professional fighter as a second professional sports career is astounding.
Well, I think what it was is I was very fortunate to have coaches that was ex-military. They taught me discipline. They taught me to believe in yourself. And, I ended up getting a coach by the name of Tom Landry, that I think is one of the finest men I've ever been around. And he used to always say, if your family is not together, you're not going to be together. And that helped to bring discipline in my life. And I always wanted to be a Marine. A lot of people don't know I always wanted to be a Marine. And later in life, I've been working with the military now on the behavioral health side for the last 12 years. So I'm at a base every 3 weeks all over the world. And I see the young men and women who are really true heroes. And this is not kissing up, but they are true heroes. And as I see what they have done for this country, I feel guilty. I feel guilty because I played a game that just has a ball. I can get tired. I can send my ball. I can go home. But I see the young men and women that sacrifice their life up. They give all this up, and it inspires me. It inspires me to go out and be better. And I say I won't quit. I won't quit. I grew up overweight. With a speech impediment. I was bullied a great deal, and I overcame through sacrifices. And that's what I try to tell all kids. You got to sacrifice. Even like right now when I talk about being a leader. To be a leader, you have to be a leader yourself first. Meaning you have to lead yourself to say, you know what, if I want to do this, I got to work to do it. It's not just going to happen. Nothing is going to happen. You got to work to do it. And you got to be yourself. And getting into the octagon, a lot of people don't know, when I was in college, I fought in college. I used to play on Saturdays. I went to church Sunday morning. I fought in martial arts tournament Sunday afternoon. So this is something I've been doing all my life. And, I was very disciplined from my parents. I ended up getting coaches that was disciplined. That's all I knew. I knew how to compete. compete in life, compete at everything that I set out to do. And I love to win. This is one thing you would know about Herschel Walker. I love to win. So if anyone tell you that winning is not everything, they're losing. And that's the reason I tell you right now. That's the reason I tell you right now that I get fed up watching some of the stuff that happened on television, because it's like, I was watching The Last Dance with Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And I was watching how they were saying how difficult he was on his teammates. And I'm sitting there saying, I think he's great. I think it's great because they won championships, because he had to make them play above where they were playing at. One of the greatest things I ever had is to play with someone like Michael Irvin, to play with someone like Deion Sanders, with Reggie White, that those guys, they practice excellence, which made me practice excellence, which I wanted to be better than they were, because I didn't want them talking about Michael Irvin. I want them to talk about Herschel Walker. I don't want them talking about Deion Sanders. I want them talking about Herschel Walker. So when I get into the octagon, I'm working with the military. Most of the young men and women that's been recruits, they know the name Herschel Walker, because they were not around when I was playing. But by me getting into the octagon, they're shocked that I can come into to a military base and I'm jumping out of a plane. They're shocked I come to a military place and I'm taking a gun shooting, or I'm doing the things that they're doing. I'm out with the SEALs out in the ocean. They're shocked that I can do those things. But then they listen to me. They listen to me where I tell them that, there's no shame to ask for help. That if you're struggling, if anything is going wrong, there's no shame to ask for help. And that's what I do, because I went through a tough time in my life. And I tell people, I'm a tough guy, but sometimes I shed a tear. And that's the reason I did that post, is I was sad. I was sad to see this country what it is today, because I love America, guys. This is the best country in the world. I love America, and I'm not going to let it go without a fight. Right. I have a son. I have a son. And I have brothers and sisters. I'm not going to let this go without a fight. I'm Herschel Walker. I'm in this shape. I'm ready to go, and I'm not going to lose this without a fight.
I love that, man. I think that's a great lesson. Again, I think the discipline is the thing that seems to shine through. And honestly, the element of faith that I know that both of you have, again, I wish we could instill that into those next generations, because it's going to be, it makes a difference. I mean, it's so clear in just the results that, you guys have manifest throughout your entire lives. It's truly awesome. Now, we got to go take one more break, and we'll be right back with Burgess Owens and Herschel Walker. Thanks, guys.
This country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them.
Man is about to launch himself on a trip to the moon.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things.
Man on the moon. Boy.
Okay, we're going to be, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
38-year-old American standing on the surface of the moon.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
That magnificent moment, they did the impossible because they knew that together there is absolutely nothing Americans can't do. Now we are ready to begin the next great chapter of American space exploration.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
The vows of this nation can only be fulfilled if we in this nation are first.
Once more we will launch intrepid souls blazing through the sky and soaring into the heavens. Once more we will summon the American spirit to tame the next great American frontier. And once more we will proudly lead humanity. And that's what it is. It's humanity beyond the earth and into those forbidden skies, but they will not be forbidden for long.
With guidance, navigation, and control.
You're very important people. You have a great, great contribution. What you're doing has been incredible, but it will be even more incredible, far more incredible, because we are giving you a platform the likes of which nobody has ever been given. Our nation of pioneers still yearns to conquer the unknown. Because we are Americans, and the future belongs totally to us.
About Dragon, loud and clear.
And we will make America great again.
And back ignition.
Well, guys, welcome back to the Triggered Podcast. Two awesome guests, just guys that have been winners, in so many aspects of their lives, and really become friends. And Herschel is a really a lifelong friend. I mean, Herschel, you're probably one of the people I've known longest in my life, amazingly enough, from the early 80s, and that's going to date us both a little bit, but we touched on sort of professional sports and the discipline and all of the things that you guys were able to channel to succeed there, but also later on in life. But talk to me a little bit about sort of the organization of professional sports today, when you see, again, the sort of the recent controversy of the NBA just sort of taking the talking points of the Chinese Communist government and just running with it as though it's the gospel. I mean, what's changed in professional sports, maybe or the marketing thereof, where it's actually become seemingly much more political? Has it always been that way and we just never noticed, or has that manifested itself more recently? Maybe we'll start with Burgess. And
keep in mind the folks who founded the NFL. They were the guys who were out there in World War II, out in the Philippines, or when Al Davis's part, he was too young to go to fight, but they all had the same patriotism. So they built the NFL based on their love for country. They looked at the NFL and sports as a way to bring people together. It's interesting when we find things in common. That's when we begin to look at each other from inside out and outside in. We talk about the sports, and we talk about military. Why is it that seems to be the place where the most integration, natural, organic integration happens? Because people get a chance to look at character, and if they can depend on someone, if their work ethic, and they start to respect it, and they want to be part of it. Well, that was the NFL. I remember when I came to the NFL back in 1973, it was still a place that had no quarterbacks, middle linebackers, free safeties, centers, because as Herschel mentioned, one of the things that happened back in the South in the early days is that we were looked at as not being able to think. We're not intelligent, and that's why education was such a big thing for my dad's generation. It was a big deal. What's happened is this was happening throughout our country. This is why we have to be so careful. The people that loved our country, the people that built these foundations, that built our institutions, even our college institutions, they've been replaced by people who are different. They've been replaced, I'm going to go back to politics, by people who think differently than we do. They love other places more than they love us. I can make it simple. Socialists and Marxists, at the end of the day, Karl Marx made, once again, the first battleground is the writing of history. How do you do that? Get inside the institutions, begin to change the way our history is taught, change what's made. Many of our kids have no idea what free market stands for, what it's all about. We now have the NFL and NFL that not only brought politics into the picture for the first time. Never has this happened. People from different sides of the aisle can go to a game, root for the same team, be excited because they have a flag, they had their team, all that they can rally around. All of a sudden, we have leadership that brings in division. They allow Kaepernick to start disrespecting our flag, disrespecting our anthem, and of course, at the same time, they now have their Nike. Now is the marketing arm of the NFL who has Kaepernick as the face of it. So this, of course, is divisiveness. We have to make sure that Americans, we understand again, and going back to the politics part of it, everything we're dealing with now, we're at war. We're about our culture. And if we want to stand up and make sure we continue this thing moving forward, let's stand up for America. Let's do the things your dad was talking about, making sure we do things we manufacture inside our country. Let's do that. Let's be proud of our manufacturers. Make sure our businesses grow. Let's make sure we keep that wall going so we keep our culture safe. And those who come here can't wait to be Americans and learn our culture, assimilate, and give back to us. Those are very simple things we need to do, things we grew up with. But we have to understand every part of our society is under attack. It's not simply one simple thing. And once we understand who the enemy is, we can go out and defeat it and win our country back in the future for our kids.
Yeah, well, Herschel, what are your thoughts on this sort of, I mean, the notion, I mean, today I see it, whether it's, frankly, professional athletes or, music industry people. I mean, I have sort of a lot of friends that are there in that world, and they're like, hey, man, we love what you're doing. We just can't say it. Like, if we said it, it would be over. I mean, it seems like there's really a double standard. If you give your political views and they happen to be really woke and you happen to be really left, it's like, to your point, you don't have to be a good quarterback, but you'll still get the Nike contract. If you're on the right and you said the same thing, I mean, you can kiss your career goodbye. Was there always that sort of political divide, even amongst the players, where you couldn't voice your opinion, or were you able to sort of be able to have that discourse, whether it be in the locker room, whether it be with management, whether it be with coaches? Has it just been divisive now, or has it just been that the lines have been drawn and it's okay to be one way and not the other, Herschel?
Well, I think the social media world has changed all this. I think that's the problem. I think the social media world has changed it all. Whereas, before it was teamwork, before it was togetherness. Mm-hmm. And now people are afraid to voice their opinion because they're worried about what someone's going to think. So it's almost on the cover. They don't want to say it on the cover. And I'm saying, guys, that is the problem. The problem is you will not voice your opinion because you're afraid of what someone's going to think about you. Well, what about truth? What about truth? Be on the truth to yourself. And that's what I tell people all the time. I got to be true to Herschel Walker because I have a responsibility to my family. I got a responsibility to my friends. I got a responsibility to my country. Well, my family, I love them to death. So I want them to do what's right. My friends, I love them to death. So I'm going to be there when they need me. My country, I'm going to support it however I can support it. So I think being true to who I think fits in that position. Well, that was quarterbacks. I may not have liked. I don't have to go to dinner with them. I don't have to go eat with them. I don't have to go visit with them. But when you step on that field, I better block for them because we're a team. And that's what you have to do here. Who said that you have to believe in this president? Who said you had to vote for him? But because he won, you should support him because he represents the United States of America. And that's the problem we have. The social media, everyone has a phone. They have to do their own little post. They have to do this. And I think that is a problem because everyone have a voice. But what's great about America, we have a chance to have that voice. That our ancestors have fought for us to have an opportunity to think for ourselves, have an opportunity to speak for ourselves. And I said, guys, we need to remember that. We're becoming a society like these society that everybody want to leave to come to the United States. Why in the world do we need a border? Yeah. Because people want to come to the United States. Well, now we're becoming these society that they're leaving. So we need to think about that. Let's not be fooled by this. And I think we need to think about it.
Well, you're 100% right. It's sort of interesting. I always note, as much as people complain about America and they want to be outraged about everything, I mean, it seems like the boats only come one way. Meaning, you don't see too many people fleeing America for Venezuela and socialist countries and these things. They sort of come this way.
Remember this? You remember when your father was being elected? I heard so many people say, "Oh, if he get elected, I'm leaving the United States of America."
They're still here. It's a funny story.
They never left.
Yeah. Funny story. I was actually, there's a cigar club I go to in New York every once in a while with some buddies, and I literally had, Al Sharpton is there all the time, and so I've known him for a long time. He's, sort of, we joke that we're frenemies, but we're joking about these things, right? And I remember him being there, and it's about a week after the election in 2016.
He'd be my choice for the Republicans. It would assure 4 more years of the Democrats. Run, Donald, run.
If Donald Trump is the nominee, I'm open to support anyone while I'm also reserving my ticket to get out of here if he wins. Only because he'd probably have me deported anyway.
And it just so happens that Rudy Giuliani is always there. So he was there with a couple buddies. I was there with a couple buddies. Al's there with a couple buddies. So Al walks by, I go, Al, what are you doing here, Al? He goes, Junior, what do you mean? I'm always here. We're always talking. I go, no. You said you were moving to Canada, Al. What the hell are you doing here? And the whole place sort of erupted. It was pretty funny. Even Al Sharpton laughed at that one. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, for all of that, and again, you guys have lived some pretty blessed lives in terms of the successes that you made. But again, you grew up in the segregationist South. while things are clearly not perfect here, I imagine they've progressed greatly in some fronts. And again, to your point, Burgess, about family and about that structure, maybe they haven't. And I think I'd love to integrate some of that back in there because I think that'd be an important thing. But, Herschel, since you sort of, talked about that, talk a little bit about how you met my father. I mean, back in, when you said it, you're one of the first guys to call for him to maybe run for office. But, you met him in the early 80s when he himself was just sort of starting out. Talk a little bit about that because I think it'd be pretty interesting for the viewers.
Well, it's funny because I told everyone I knew the Donald before he became the Donald.
Yeah, he was
before
just
he
Donald.
got the name the Donald, he was just Donald. He was not the Donald. And what's strange is we hung out together a lot. We did a lot of things together. Everything he was having, I got an invitation to it. So we were doing different things. And, he even went to Disney World with me. And I don't know if you remember this. You may have been too little, you're too young. But your father went to Disney World with me and my family. So we go to Disney World. Okay. And, I was over at your house many times. And so since 1983, your father and I stayed in contact. We've been friends since 1983. So when I hear someone call him a racist, it's insulting to me because I say he's not a racist unless I'm not black. I have to look to make sure I'm black. And
well, hey,
people get mad.
If you voted for Trump, you ain't black.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black, and you ain't black, and you ain't black.
No.
According to Joe Biden.
That's what I'm about to say. I have to look at myself and make sure I'm black because some people say, Herschel, you're not black. I'm like, no, I am black. No, I'm pecan tan. I'm not really black. I'm pecan tan. But anyway.
Yeah, only Joe Biden can get away with that one. But again, imagine Donald Trump said what Joe Biden said about that. I mean, imagine the outrage and the fallout that would happen from that one. That would be scary.
The problem we have is so many people are watching these different news outlets. And these news outlets make statements that's not true. So they take these statements and give them to other people, and people start believing it as being true. Yeah. So I say, no, that's not true. So you sit and argue with someone, and I'm like, that's why I said truth is the key to success.
We choose truth over facts.
I know I'm not the prettiest guy in the world, but I'm okay with that. I know I'm not the best athlete in the world, but I'm okay with that. So
you guys are pretty close.
Well, truth is the key to success. So the truth is, I say, look at the record. Look at the deeds he has done in 3 years compared to 4 presidents in 16 years.
Yeah. It is. Can I add to that, Herschel? Because I tell you, the reason I'm an eternal optimist is a lot of what we're talking about right now. First of all, we have a history. And what we have always done together, we've always, no matter what our obstacles be, keep in mind, we lost over 600,000 lives in Civil War. We came out of that. We kind of came back together, became even a stronger country. I am such an optimist about our country because America's within our DNA. We love freedom. We love that. We love the fact of servicing other people. There's never been a country, a society that serves more around the world than we do. That's who we really are. And now that we're kind of at the point we're realizing that there's something going on that's not quite American, we're going to come together. We're going to weave our way through this. One of the things I said the other night on Laura Ingraham, is that I really believe that American people do the right things at the right time for the right reasons. It's not an accident that 2016, when nobody saw it coming, that we collectively said, you know what? We don't want the other option. So we're going to go for President Trump, Donald Trump. We'll see what happens. And guess what? That's the way we've always rolled. We've always been able to do the right thing at the right reason because we do care about our country. We don't want to be enslaved. And we see it coming. We kind of instinctively know that's what we want to go away from. So I'm totally believing that we come through this process. We're going to learn even more. What have we learned? We learned there's something called Passover. When you have locusts of riders coming into a city, they pass over these little businesses that have an AR-15 standing in front of it. They pass over. They realize they don't want anything to do with that. So Second Amendment is something that we all see now, no matter what side of the aisle we're on. We need to make sure we keep it. We also understand that we put a little power in the hands of a few people who don't believe in our Constitution. They can not only cut down and shut down our businesses, tell us when and when not to go to church. Those are the kind of things we now understand that it's not just hypothetical anymore. we see is real. It's something that's happening by giving the wrong side too much power. So the pendulum's gonna swing back. And I'll tell you what's happening throughout the black community. So again, I've been a Republican since Ronald Reagan. I was always conservative, but I voted Democrat. But Ronald Reagan kind of got me thinking differently. For the last, 30 plus years, I've been talking the talk to black Americans. We need to wake up. Let's vote out values and principles first, not party and politicians. We're finally doing it. You go from 12% black men that were for candidate Trump, and we're now 35% black Americans that's saying, let's give this guy a shot. That's what the left fears so much. That's why they're going frantic. That's why they can't think straight. They're doing stuff that everybody's wondering, what in the world are they doing now? Because they are panicking, they're drowning, and they need to keep the black vote or bring illegals in fast enough to replace us. And with that being said, I just want you guys to keep this in mind. What does the left always do? It's very easy, no matter who that might be, who trusts them. They use, abuse, and discard. Always. Once they're through with you, they're done with you. You don't need any more. They'll find somebody else to use, abuse, and discard. So understanding that what we're up against, realizing that we as a country have always been winning. That's what we do. We just win, baby. We have the most optimistic people here, and I believe we'll come out of this much stronger, much more united, and we'll give us 4 more years, and you see a country that no one ever saw coming. It's going to be so awesome to experience that, where people literally wake up every morning, going to work, building their business, saying, man, my kid's going to have such a great future here because I'm a part of it. I got it, and we voted for the right guy. So,
hey, Donald Jr., let me say something that's going to freak both of you guys out. And I was thinking of
Are you running for Congress too? Like
no.
Oh, okay.
I remember I was just going to substitute while some of the leaders don't want to step in now. We're going to step in and substitute. But I was thinking, society has changed so much. The demographic of America has changed so much. Is it not time for us to put an amendment on the Constitution? And what I mean by that is the Constitution was great for times back then. But I think it may be time to put some amendments on some of the Constitution because the demographic has changed a lot. And I think that may be the problem is we're trying to stay within that lines and it doesn't work. We have to change now with the demographic that we have that we're dealing with. And I think that is what your father is understanding, that he is changing this America the way it should be changed, meaning you look at the way what is happening, and that's what you have to go with, not what it used to be. You have to get to another distance now. So I think your father, that's that progressive thinking he has.
Yeah. Well, no. Listen, I think that all makes a lot of sense. Listen, I like your guys' vision for the future. Burgess, I love that you're stepping in and getting in it after it yourself, and Herschel, that you're willing to be vocal about these sort of things and willing to step out. And again, trust me, I can't even imagine, coming from, it's not easy being a guy from New York City and being a vocal conservative, and, you guys coming out, from where you're from, as African Americans, to be vocal about it, I think it's great. But the fact that we're able to have that conversation right now, that's to me what America is really all about. That we're able to have those things that, we can fight for those things, and we can protest. It doesn't mean we can necessarily, take baseball bats to police. That's not what it means. But that we can do that and we can have this discourse. I love that, and I just really wanted to, thank you guys, and wrapping up now for your time.
One last thing, really quick.
And of course,
one last thing, really quick. And Burgess and Donald Jr., you can answer this for me, because I heard that Vice President Biden was meeting with a lot of the African leaders, and I was shocked because I started thinking, who voted in Africa leaders? Who are the African leaders that was voted in? Because I never voted for anyone, and I can guarantee you most of the people that he's meeting with, a lot of the young generation don't know who they are. So I started thinking, who voted in the African American leaders? Because I like to vote too.
It's an interesting thought, because you see that as sort of the people who are the mainstays of those communities. They sort of control all that information, which is sort of how I was talking about earlier. Meaning, the policies that Donald Trump and this administration have enacted, are probably unprecedented relative to any modern president in American history. And
which is what you need.
How many end users, how many end voters actually will ever hear that?
Yeah.
And the answer is not many. And even if they're getting the benefits, and even if they're feeling the benefits of that, who are they led to believe actually made that happen? Because I can promise you this, it's probably not Donald Trump.
Well, I'll tell you what, can I just add to this? Because as we wrap this up, it really is about we the people rising up, going to the voting pool and voting our values once again. We do that, we get this back. By the way, I want to make sure everybody knows across the country is Burgess for Utah, burgessforutah.com. And the district I'm running in is between 1 and 3 of must-have by both sides. So this is a national referendum. The Democrats must have this district to keep their power. We must get it to keep our country back, to get our country back. So for those across that listen to this conversation, go to my website, Burgess for Utah. I'm excited about the fact that we're having the conversation we're having right now. I've always believed that before the light comes the darkness, we have this drama that's going on. This gives our country a chance to really reflect, to think, and to have conversations about who is for us and who's against us. And I believe that at the end of the day, we're going to, once again, have your dad go in. We're going to keep the Senate, and we're going to finally get the House back for the first time in ever to have the kind of House that will truly support the American way, American people. So I'm excited about that. And a conversation like this is what makes it happen. I mean, all our backgrounds are so different, but what we have in common, we love this country. We give anything for this country. We shed a tear when we see that flag flying and the national anthem going. That's Americans. That's who we are. And it's across the board. There are many of us like this. Many of them are afraid to speak up right now, but in the end of the day, they're not afraid to go in the booth and pull that lever for the right people. And I'm looking forward to that.
Well, no, I really appreciate it. And I encourage anyone watching, go check out what Burgess is doing again, because as someone who came from as an outsider, got into the world, politically because my father and everything like that. It's great to see others, again, who don't need the job, who haven't been career bureaucrats, who've done other things and succeeded at every other walk, of life that they've ever partaken in, to do this. So I love that you're doing that, Burgess. I wish you all the luck in that. And again, encourage everyone watching to check it out. Herschel, thank you both really for being here, for doing it, for taking the time. I appreciate the friendship, that we've had, and I continue to have that one for many, many years to come. You guys are the best. I hope you all enjoyed watching Triggered. Thank you for tuning in and checking it out. Give us your feedback. We like to hear from it, what we can do differently, your opinions, your thoughts, because we actually like to listen. So thank you very much for everything, guys. Great being with you. Thank you both for tuning in and checking it out. Thank you both for actually participating, and we will see you soon, and look forward to talking to you then.
Thanks so much, Tom.
Hey, God bless you.